Welcome to the Own Your Best Life podcast. I'm May Emson, your host, leadership and mindset coach. Here, we talk all things spiritual, mindset, business, leadership, and wellness for the modern seeker who wants to align their life with purpose and inspiration. We'll cover career changes, stress management, meditation, energy, intuition, and more. Each episode holds spiritual and practical tools to help you live a life of your wildest dreams without getting burnt out along the way. Ready to live a life on your own terms? This is the Own Your Best Life podcast. Welcome, friends, to episode number 13 of the Own Your Best Life podcast. We've all felt it before, and what is this? It's the thrill and excitement of fear. It's a scary thing, and yet fear is at times also really life-giving. So why does fear sometimes paralyze us, and at other times it propels us into motion? Why do certain individuals just seem to radiate a sense of fearlessness, and others seem stuck and paralyzed by fear? What about the question, if I weren't afraid, what would I do? These are all the questions we'll dig into today, so hold on tight. It's going to be good. So a while back, Jay, my husband, and I were at a neighborhood wine bar. This was a while back. You guys, you have to understand that. And it was date night. We asked each other this one question: what's your biggest fear? And without skipping a beat, I answered that I'm not loved. And so it really hit me. I was like, ouch, where did that come from? What was that? And actually, scratch that whole point of investigating into the past. I was just more interested in how this fear was actually affecting me right here, right now. My biggest fear is not to be loved. I had no idea that's what it was. And as we talked more and more and went on to different topics, I kept pondering, even after that night, that one question, and not only the idea of not being loved, but the idea of fear in and of itself and the role that it plays in our lives. I'm not typically one that gives into fear, and that's why it came up to me as an important thing to look into. I've been conditioned to push past physical limitations, speak when I'm scared, and overall see fear as a challenge, not as an enemy. Maybe this was cultural conditioning of an immigrant mentality where you just had to tough it out because pain really wasn't the enemy. Lack was. Not having enough was. And weakness meant that someone else could take your spot. Being sick and staying home meant that you couldn't provide for your family. And regardless of where these beliefs come from, it's important for us to see that these are real and they're running the plays of our life for us. Fear had me following the rules at work, on the field, and in life. And I can't tell you how many times I did the quote-unquote right thing, not realizing that other people didn't. Literally not cutting the corners on the field as I ran laps and watching others who would completely baffled and in a state of shock. What does this have to do with fear? It has everything to do with fear. So which fear is more important? There have been two kinds of fears that have run the plays in my life, and as I explain them to you, you might identify with these. The first one is the fear of failure. The other is the fear of not being loved. You can replace the word loved with admired, respected, if that word loved gets you feeling really uncomfortable. And when I looked closely at it, I began to realize that they're one and the same. Fear of failure, fear of not being loved, respected, admired. And why would I fear failure so much that I was willing to push myself mentally, physically, and emotionally to do whatever it takes to succeed? It was because I feared not being loved, admired, respected. And what does that even mean? And why does being loved matter? This is a good question. So, what happens when you fail? If you're an achiever, just thinking about failure makes your stomach turn. And when I fail, I don't live up to expectations. When I fail, I'm not a good daughter. When I fail, I'm not a good person. When I fail, I'm not a good employee. When I fail, I'm not a good mom, wife, leader, etc. The list goes on and on. And in this case, the stakes are high. When the stakes are high, and if this was the case, you can see why failure is not an option. In many, many, many ways, this is going to be a good thing. The idea that we raise the level of fear in our lives because we're raising, in essence, the stakes and what's important to us and what happens if we fail will lead us to do so much more in our lives than we might have done if we didn't think we had any skin in the game, if we really didn't have any stake in this, if we didn't believe that it meant something to fail. But at the same time, this is where I want you to see the other side of fear. Failure means, and it could mean, that you don't deserve goodness in your life. And what does failure look like? Failure could be anything from a bad conversation, one that didn't go well, to yelling at your kids, to getting poor feedback, to getting rejected, to not getting clients, and not living up to any of your expectations. So why would I be loved if I didn't deserve it? And failure means that I don't deserve to be loved. Failure means that all the good things in life don't get to happen for you. And this was the train of thought, and I bet you've seen it operating for yourself or others, consciously or subconsciously. So now what? If failure means all these things, yet I know very rationally that I'm going to fail no matter what I do, how do I make all of this less painful for the things that it does not need to be painful for? How do I lessen the burden of failure when I'm failing forward towards something that actually matters? And most importantly, how do I decouple self-worth from failure so I can experience true freedom? This idea about the big, quote unquote, the big failure that could come if I stop staying on the path that I'm on. And I'm sure many of you guys are thinking the same thing. Well, what if I change paths? That's like a big deal. What if I change paths and I decide to pursue a new one? What about this big failure versus a little failure? These are the questions, and were the questions that I've been asking myself time and time again. And as a doer, I face failure constantly. And in order to keep going down these paths of, a new career change or personal development, working on all aspects of my life and continuing to perform and improve and to keep expanding my capacity to do more and have more and to be more and experience more, I failed a lot. And what's kept me sane the whole time was when I finally began to cut the cords and separate my self-worth from my achievements. And this is what allowed me to change careers or have more time with my family and walk the walk and actually live my values. And again, the difference here is not that I don't have a sense of why. I don't have a sense of purpose. I don't have a sense of incredible connection to the reason I'm doing something and the reason that I'm going to be relentless or I'm going to keep working at it or I'm staying committed. The difference is I don't have to do it in order to feel self-worth. So do you guys get that small nuance yet huge nuance? Because this is everything. When you start to realize that your desire to do something will create the discipline to do something, then you will go so much further and faster than you've ever have before, sustainably. But if your discipline comes before your desire because you are coming from a place of fear, and a fear that's based on lack, and a fear that's based on not enoughness, a fear based on unworthiness, then the conditions upon which your achievements come is literally going to be built on a house of cards. Constantly chasing to continually feel fulfilled. This is really, really important. And this is something I have to think about a lot because as I slow down in life to be more present, to be more still, to receive more, to develop my intuition more, to be just more engaged as a human being in the day-to-day, because that is the reality and that's what is happening around me, and I want to connect to it so deeply. I actually have to be able to step out of this place of doing, and doing from this cycle of fear that's driven by self-worth, versus doing from a place of choice. Doing from a place of choice. So here is an analogy that I hope you guys can visualize to help you move past this. So imagine that these fears are real. When I say real, like they are things, like actual things. And the way I think about thoughts as form. They are real, right? They create things in our life because they're, in essence, an energy. So imagine these fears are these things that surround you from the outside, almost like a field of thoughts around you. And they keep everything else at bay. It's like an armor of sorts. And this armor of fear protects you from the outside world, penetrating your sense of self-worth. So, for example, if I build up this wall of achievements driven by fear, right, that's how the two connect, no one can say anything about me. If I build up a wall of perfection, I will be flawless. But what if you now see that these fears are, because they're things, imagine them as rods of light that you can actually take down from around you, and instead use them to build a path for you to walk on, to move out of this bubble that you are in and break free. So it's the idea of actually seeing the fear as this rod of light, bringing it down and using it as a stepping stone. So this is when I talk about the thrill of fear, this is when you're actually experiencing almost like this electric shock in a good way, when you're embracing it and you're purposely going forward into it, but you're able to harness it and use this energy instead of it as a way that blocks you, is a way that lets you walk forward. So think of fear as an actual limiting belief. And not only that, it can cloud that ultimate force of creation and expansion of yourself, which is clarity. If I had a fear, for example, that my family was going to limit my ability to be successful in my career, instead of tending to my family in terms of time and even talking about them in conversation at work, I would pretend that I had no restrictions in terms of travel or work hours. This is what actually happened to me. So what was the fear? That I would be looked at as weak or less committed because I had to go home at a certain time. I had limitations. I couldn't, give it all in terms of every, last piece of me. But what if I dismantled the fear? What if I look to remove that as a fear? I could then be able to ask the one question that actually drives clarity. What is it that I actually want? What do you want? What do you want? So with this clarity, I could then take the fear and turn it into a belief, right? If I actually said, you know what, I want a life where I do have time to be with my kids during their important events, that I can work from home, 1 or 2 days a week or the whole week, whatever it is, that level of specificity is the clarity that I'm talking about, that I can build a schedule that works around my family. Once you have that clarity, you could then take the fear, turn it into a belief and thought that would actually serve you, that would actually serve me. And instead of thinking, for example, that family is a limitation, what if I believe that family is going to increase my ability to be successful? So, for example, I'm going to be talking about my family, and by making commitments in terms of my time at home known at work, I could then increase my worth in my work and my career, because people would see me as a leader who actually walked the walk and talked the talk, a role model. And not only that, this is authentic. It's powerful because it's aligned with my values. And most importantly, it's a decision. And when you make decisions, they come from a place of choice. Choice denotes personal power. This is you stating that you are worthy. And by the way, whether you say family is important to me and you actually say that, if you don't say that, that's also a different kind of decision. And so I want you to own that decision. Regardless of which one it is, there's no right or wrong here. But the whole idea is no matter what it is, you actually own it. And if you're feeling a bit of unrest on one side versus the other, and for me it was I wasn't spending enough time with my family, then aligning myself with that decision, even though it was hard and I had to push past the fear in order for me to do that, became that authentic, aligned way forward. So instead of using the fear to cripple you, fear is now your ability to find freedom. Because once I saw that when I am upfront about my commitments and what I truly cared about, I had a point of power. And when you add up enough of all of these different points of powers that are coming from your true values, then you become bigger than your fears. Your fears become the path upon which you can walk, and each step you take can light you up even further. And can you see how this can change your perspective around fear entirely? You can now see that every fearful thought, every shadow part of ourselves that we are hiding or have been hiding, we can now use it. You can use it as your unique calling card. Because on the flip side of fear is the clarity of the thing that you want. I used to be afraid to share that I was working a 9 to 5 and that I was creating a business, coaching, writing, and podcasting on the evenings and the weekends. Can you believe that now? Because now I share that very clearly, and now I see it as just me and the way I work. But as soon as I made that declaration and shared it with folks in terms of, hey, I'm in my 9 to 5, I also do this other thing. Hey, as I do my coaching, by the way, I also have this 9 to 5, and this is what it looks like. Of course I do both. I don't have to choose. And it's always been an and conversation for me because they both light me up in different ways. And so this is where you just settle in. You just settle into who you are. And fear is the way forward, right? The fear of me telling people around, hey, I'm only doing this versus only doing that, was just the idea that I thought it was something that would limit me. This idea that came not from me, but from the world around me. So you might have things in your life now that you have no role models for. No role models for. And because you don't see a model of example in front of you, you think that it's wrong. And what I'm here to tell you is, whatever you're doing, if you're doing it, own it. If you're choosing to do it, own it. Declare it. Say it. Speak up about it. Share it. Especially if you have committed yourself to it. The way I committed myself to my family, and yet I was still kind of like, do I tell people that I really want to be home for a certain thing because this is really important to me? How do I say after all these years that I just need time at home with my family? How would that make me look? And so all of these things, on the other side of it, seem so clear. But if you see a fear and it's staring you in the face, you have a choice. And that choice is going to make you way more powerful than just staying within your little bubble every single day and not moving forward. So what do I actually do now, right? Tangible, specific things that I do and strategies. I now do an inventory of fears as an exercise, right? This idea that there are always, no matter what level that you're at, no matter how much you've expanded, there's more places for you to grow. There's more parts of yourself that are still becoming and growing into another version that would serve whatever it is that's in front of you even more, right? Like if we change, for example, the idea that you were a single person and now you're married, or the idea that you are working in one area and now you're working in a different area, or maybe you suddenly became a mom or a dad, or you have just these new roles and responsibilities. There's always change. Whenever there's change, there's always fear. So now I actually sit myself down and I do an inventory of my fears. I ask myself, what is keeping me from doing the thing I want? For example, I want to show up as the best, coach and leader that there is. I want to be able to put out a great strategy at work in terms of training and developing our people. I want to gather lots of people together and share this message of self-development, of growth, of personal inquiry, of aligning with your intuition. I have to ask myself, what is keeping me from doing the things I want? What belief do I have? What fear do I have? And as I continue to expand my capacity in the world, all these new beliefs or new fears start to arise. Anytime I'm doing something new, I have to ask myself the same thing again. Because if I want to continue walking down this path, if I want to continue moving forward, I can now see that asking myself what I fear, asking myself what belief I have, is literally opening the doors of opportunity. Because behind every fear is an opportunity. It's one avenue you haven't explored because you've been worried about something or scared about something. So I have to take each of those fears down from that, bubble of fear that's around me, this force field, and use it. And instead of ignoring it and hoping that fear goes away, I have to ask myself this next question. So I have the fear. What fears do I have? Then the next thing I ask is, what can I do about this fear? And not only that, it's not just one thing I can do. What are the multiple things I can do? What are my options for handling this? And then, out of all these things, what can I do right now to take one tiny step forward in an aligned way? So again, first things first, what is holding me back? What am I worried about? What am I not doing? And then I ask, now what can I do about this? What are my options? And then the third thing is, what's one thing I can do right now to take a tiny step forward in a more aligned way of living? So this idea of sharing more and more of the truth of who we are is often rooted in overcoming fear and remembering just how much we're truly worth, how much we are loved, not by others. And again, if loved is too gushy for you or too much feelings for you, you can use respected or admired. So how much we're respected and admired, not by others, but by ourselves. So I'm going to go back to the word love, because ultimately it really is this. Love yourself enough to see your fears and ask yourself that question, what is my biggest fear? And what if I weren't afraid? What would I do? What would I do if I weren't afraid? So I hope the answer and the fears that you find behind these questions thrills you, and that you can start to see a way forward. So if you like today's episode and you want to figure out what's next for you, you're going to want to join a new program I'm launching called Intuitive Leadership Coaching. Intuitive Leadership Coaching is a 4-month group coaching program where we'll dive into the 4 pillars that will take that yearning inside for what's next and bring it to life. We'll start off with bonus one-on-one coaching sessions, Akashic record readings, and a group call, and we'll meet twice a month and work through and uncover what's within so that you can lead with confidence, meaning, and alignment with who you are and what you want next, and answer that ultimate question, what's next? So you can check out the details at the links below or at www.mayemson.com/intuitive leadership. 50% of the proceeds will go to the NAACP-LDF, which is the Legal Defense and Education Fund. So I wouldn't wait if I were you. We start really soon. I'm so excited, and I hope you join us. All right, have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye now. Thanks so much for joining us this week on Own Your Best Life. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, can you please rate and review on iTunes? I would so appreciate it. Share it with a friend, take a screenshot of it, and tag @MayEmson. This helps continue to get the word out. For more show notes and resources, check out www.mayemson.com. You'll have all the links to everything you heard here today. Thanks so much for listening. It's time to own your best life.